The blizzard had come out of nowhere, sweeping across the highlands of Ethiopia with a fury that caught everyone by surprise. Desta, a 43-year-old member of the Gurage people, had lived in the Simeon Mountains his entire life, and he'd never seen a storm like this in March. For 3 days, snow and ice had pounded his village. When the storm finally broke on the fourth morning, Desta ventured out to check on his small herd of goats that had been sheltering in a rocky outcrop about 2 kilometers from the village. The landscape was transformed, everything covered in a thick blanket of white that was surreal in the African highlands. The temperature had dropped to well below freezing, something that happened rarely but devastatingly in these high-altitude regions. Desta was following the path toward the goat shelter when he saw something that made him stop dead in his tracks. At first, his brain couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. There, half buried in a snowdrift against a cluster of rocks, were what looked like 4 large mounds covered in frost and ice. He moved closer, his heart pounding, and then he realized what he was looking at. Lions. A mother lioness and 3 cubs, huddled together, completely covered in ice and snow. They looked like statues, frozen solid, their eyes closed, their bodies motionless. Desta's first thought was that they were dead. Lions weren't built for this kind of cold. The storm must have caught them in the open, and they tried to shelter against the rocks but hadn't survived. He should have walked away. Lions were dangerous even in the best circumstances, and getting involved with dead predators was asking for trouble from scavengers. But something made him move closer. He knelt down beside the mother lion and placed his hand on her side, brushing away some of the ice. And then he felt it, a flutter. The faintest rise and fall of her ribcage. She was alive. Barely, but alive. Desta quickly checked the cubs. 2 of them showed no signs of life, their small bodies frozen solid. But the 3rd cub, the smallest one, showed the same faint breathing as the mother. Desta's mind raced. These lions were dying from hypothermia. Without immediate help, they would be dead within hours, maybe minutes. But what could he possibly do? He was one man with no equipment, and these were wild lions. Even dying ones could kill him if they woke up frightened or confused. But Desta had spent his entire life in these mountains. He'd treated hypothermia in goats, in sheep, even in people caught in unexpected cold. He knew the principles: warmth, slow warming, protection from further cold. He made a decision that everyone would later call either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. He ran back to his village as fast as he could, bursting into his home where his wife, Aster, was preparing breakfast over the fire. "I need blankets, hot water bottles, dry grass for insulation and help," he said, gasping for breath. "There's a lioness and her cub dying from cold. I'm going to save them." Aster stared at her husband like he'd lost his mind. "You're going to do what?" "I'll explain later. Please, Aster, trust me. I need those supplies now." Something in his voice, the urgency, the determination, made Aster move. She gathered blankets while Desta grabbed 2 large clay pots, filled them with hot coals from the fire, and wrapped them in thick cloth to create makeshift heating sources. His son, Tades, who was 16, appeared in the doorway. "Father, what's happening?" "Grab the wooden sled we use for firewood. I need it now." Within 10 minutes, Desta, Tades, and Aster were trudging back through the snow toward the rocks, pulling a sled loaded with blankets, hot coal pots, and bundles of dry grass. When they reached the lions, Aster gasped. "Desta, they're wild lions. If they wake up..." "If they wake up, it means I succeeded in saving their lives," Desta interrupted. "And I'll deal with that problem when it comes. Right now, they're dying." He immediately got to work. First, he and Tades carefully brushed away as much snow and ice as they could from the mother lion's body. Her magnificent coat was crusted with ice, her whiskers frozen, her paws like blocks of ice. "We can't warm them too quickly," Desta explained as he worked. "That can cause shock and kill them. We need to warm them gradually." He wrapped the hot coal pots in multiple layers of blanket, then placed them near, but not touching, the lioness's body. He packed dry grass around her for insulation, then covered her with blankets, creating a cocoon that would trap and gradually increase her body heat. He did the same for the small surviving cub, tucking the tiny body against its mother for shared warmth. The two dead cubs he moved aside respectfully. There was nothing he could do for them. For the next 4 hours, Desta and his family maintained the warming process. They replaced the coal pots when they cooled. They monitored the lioness and cub for signs of recovery or distress. They protected them from the wind that continued to blow across the exposed mountainside. Desta's hands were numb from the cold, his face burned from windburn, but he didn't stop. Aster and Tades took turns running back to the village to warm up and bring fresh hot coals, but Desta refused to leave. Around midday, something changed. The lioness's breathing became deeper, more regular. Her eyelids fluttered. The cub made a small sound, barely audible, but definitely alive. "They're coming back," Desta whispered. "It's working." Another hour passed. The lioness's eyes opened, cloudy and confused at first, but open. She tried to lift her head, failed, tried again. Desta backed away slowly, giving her space. "Easy, mother. You're safe. Just rest. Get your strength back." The lioness's eyes focused on Desta. He expected fear or aggression, but what he saw was something else: exhaustion, confusion, and perhaps the faintest glimmer of recognition that this strange creature had helped her. She lowered her head back down and closed her eyes, too weak to do anything else. By late afternoon, the cub was moving more actively, crawling closer to its mother, seeking warmth and milk. The mother was able to lift her head for longer periods, though she still couldn't stand. "We can't leave them here overnight," Tades said. "The temperature will drop again. They need more shelter." Desta looked around. About 50 meters away was a small cave, really just an overhang of rock that created a protected alcove. It would provide much better shelter than the open area where the lions had collapsed. "We'll move them," Desta decided. "Move them? Father, the mother must weigh 150 kilograms. Then we'll need more help." Desta ran back to the village one more time and returned with 4 more men, his brothers and cousins who thought he was crazy but couldn't ignore his passionate plea for help. Moving the lioness was an ordeal. Even semi-conscious and weak, she was massive and heavy. They used the sled, carefully rolling her onto it, then dragging it the 50 meters to the cave. The cub, Desta carried himself, tucked inside his jacket for warmth. They created a proper nest in the cave, thick layers of dry grass for insulation, rocks arranged to block wind, blankets secured around the lioness and cub. Desta left 2 hot coal pots wrapped and positioned safely for gradual warmth. "I'll come back tomorrow morning to check on them," Desta announced. "And if they're strong enough to attack you?" his brother asked. "Then I'll have saved their lives and died knowing I did the right thing," Desta replied. "But I don't think they'll attack. That lioness knows I helped her." "Lions don't think like that." "Maybe they do," Desta interrupted. "Maybe we just never gave them a chance to show us." That night, Desta barely slept. He kept seeing the lioness's eyes when she'd first looked at him, that moment of recognition, of understanding. The next morning he approached the cave alone, despite Aster's protests. He called out softly as he approached, announcing his presence, moving slowly. When he reached the cave entrance, he stopped and caught his breath. The lioness was standing. Weak, unsteady, but standing. The cub was nursing, his small tail flicking back and forth with contentment. The lioness looked at Desta. For a long moment, neither moved. Then the lioness did something extraordinary. She lowered her head, not in aggression, but in what looked unmistakably like a nod of acknowledgement. Desta placed his hand over his heart. "You're welcome, mother. I'm glad you survived." He left fresh water in a container at the cave entrance, then backed away and returned to his village. Over the next 5 days, Desta visited the cave daily, bringing water and occasionally leaving scraps of meat from the goats that had been slaughtered for village meals. He never got close. The lioness was regaining her strength and her wild nature, and Desta respected the boundaries. By the 6th day, the cave was empty. The lioness and cub had left, presumably heading back to wherever their territory was in the lower, warmer elevations of the mountains. Desta felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. He'd saved their lives, but he knew he'd probably never see them again. He was wrong. 10 days after the blizzard, Desta was working in his small field near the village, planting vegetables, when he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. A lion's roar. Too close to the village. He grabbed his walking stick and ran toward the sound, fearing that a lion was threatening the village livestock. Other men were already gathering with spears and weapons. But when they reached the source of the sound, they stopped in confusion. The lioness, Desta recognized her immediately by her distinctive coloring and the way she moved, was standing at the edge of the village with her cub. And beside her were 2 other adult lions and 4 more cubs. Her pride. She'd brought her entire family. The villagers raised their weapons, ready to defend their home. But Desta stepped forward, placing himself between the villagers and the lions. "Wait," he said. "She's not here to attack. Look at her behavior." The lioness was sitting calmly, not in a hunting crouch. Her pride was arranged behind her, also sitting, showing no aggression. And at her feet, in a neat row, were 3 dead hares. Gifts. She brought gifts. Before we continue, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. Now let me tell you what happened next, because this is where the story gets truly unbelievable. The lioness stood, picked up one of the hares, and walked slowly toward Desta. The villagers tensed, weapons ready, but Desta held up his hand to stop them. The lioness stopped 3 meters from Desta and gently laid the hare on the ground. Then she looked at him with those same intelligent eyes he'd seen in the cave, and she made a soft chuffing sound, the greeting sound lions make to friends, to family. She was thanking him. She was showing gratitude in the only way a lion could, by sharing her kill. Desta knelt down slowly and picked up the hare. "I accept your gift with honor," he said softly in Amharic. "You are a magnificent mother. I'm glad I could help you." The lioness held his gaze for another moment, then turned and led her pride back toward the mountains. The cub that Desta had saved, he recognized it by its smaller size and the distinctive white patch on its chest, looked back once before following its mother. The village elders called a meeting that evening. The story of what Desta had done, and what the lioness had done in return, spread like wildfire through the community. The lions brought gifts, old Abra, the village elder, said in wonder. "In all my 82 years, I have never heard of such a thing." "It's a sign from God," someone else said. The animals recognized Desta's pure heart. But what happened over the next 3 months was even more extraordinary. The lioness and her pride established a territory that included the area around Desta's village. But unlike typical lion behavior, where lions saw humans as competitors or threats, this pride showed unusual tolerance. When villagers encountered the lions while herding goats or gathering firewood, the lions would simply move away calmly. They never attacked livestock. They never threatened people. It was as if they'd drawn an invisible boundary. We live here, you live there, and we respect each other's space. Word reached the Ethiopian Wildlife Conservation Authority. Dr. Amara Wolde, a wildlife biologist from Addis Ababa University, traveled to the village to investigate these extraordinary claims. "I need to see this for myself," she told Desta. "Lions don't form mutualistic relationships with human communities. It's not in their behavioral repertoire." Desta smiled. "Then maybe we need to expand our understanding of what lions are capable of." Dr. Wolde set up camera traps and observation posts around the village and the surrounding territory. What she documented over the next 2 months challenged everything she thought she knew about lion behavior. The pride, now easily identified by the distinctive lioness Desta had saved, actively avoided the village during peak human activity hours. They hunted wild prey in the mountains but never approached the village livestock. When villagers walked paths through lion territory, the lions would watch from a distance but never approached aggressively. Most remarkably, the lioness would occasionally appear near the village boundary when Desta was working his field. She wouldn't come close, just sit on a distant ridge where he could see her, watching over him almost like a guardian. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Wolde said, reviewing her footage and field notes. "She's exhibiting protective behavior toward a human. She's teaching her pride to coexist peacefully with this specific human community. This could revolutionize our understanding of human-wildlife coexistence." 6 months after the blizzard, something happened that cemented the bond between the village and the pride. A group of poachers from outside the region came into the area, searching for lions to kill for their bones and skins, valuable on the black market. They'd set up camp about 5 kilometers from the village, laying traps and snares. The village scouts discovered the poachers' camp and reported it to the authorities, but before officials could arrive, the poachers made their move. They'd located the pride and were preparing to shoot the lioness, the matriarch, the one Desta had saved, when something unexpected happened. Desta had been in the mountains gathering medicinal plants and was walking back to the village when he heard voices speaking a language he didn't recognize. He crept closer and saw the poachers, saw their guns, saw them taking aim at the lioness who was resting with her cubs in a clearing. Desta didn't think. He just acted. He stepped into the clearing between the poachers and the lioness, his arms spread wide, shouting in Amharic, "You will not kill her. Over my dead body." The poachers were startled but quickly recovered. The leader pointed his gun at Desta. "Move, old man, or we'll shoot you too." "Then shoot me," Desta said, his voice steady despite his pounding heart. "Because I won't move." Behind him, he heard the lioness rise to her feet, heard the low rumble of her warning growl. But she wasn't growling at him, she was growling at the poachers. The pride emerged from the surrounding vegetation, 9 lions total, all focused on the poachers, all positioned protectively around Desta. The poachers' faces went pale. They were surrounded by lions who were clearly defending the humans standing among them. The leader's gun wavered. "What kind of witchcraft is this?" "No witchcraft," Desta said calmly. "Just gratitude. Just respect. Just the bonds that form when we choose compassion over cruelty." The lioness took one step forward, placing herself directly beside Desta. The message was clear: harm this human, and you'll have to go through all of us. The poachers broke. They ran, abandoning their equipment, fleeing down the mountain. The lions didn't chase far, just far enough to ensure the threat was gone. When the danger passed, Desta turned to the lioness. She was looking at him with those intelligent eyes, and in that moment, Desta understood something profound. They'd saved each other. He'd saved her from freezing to death. She'd just saved him from poachers. The debt had been repaid, but the bond remained. He reached out slowly, and for the first time since that day in the cave, he touched her. He placed his hand gently on her head, and she leaned into the touch, making that soft chuffing sound of trust and affection. The other lions watched but showed no aggression. They'd learned from their matriarch. This human was pack, was family, was friend. The authorities arrived an hour later and arrested the poachers. The story of what had happened, a pride of lions defending a human from armed poachers, made international news. Dr. Wolde's research paper, Reciprocal Altruism in Panthera Leo, a case study in human-wildlife mutualism, was published in Nature and became one of the most cited papers in wildlife behavior studies. But for Desta, none of the fame mattered. What mattered was walking in his mountains knowing he was safe because he'd chosen compassion over indifference on a cold day 6 months ago. The lioness lived for another 4 years. During that time, she raised 2 more litters of cubs, all of whom learned the same lesson she taught, that Desta's village was to be respected, that not all humans were threats, that coexistence was possible. When she finally died, peacefully of old age, on a sunny ridge overlooking the village, Desta felt the loss deeply. He hiked to where her body lay and sat with her for an hour, thanking her for the gift she'd given him. Proof that bridges could be built between human and animal, that kindness created bonds stronger than fear. Her cubs and grandcubs continued the pattern she'd established. To this day, the pride in that region shows unusual tolerance toward Desta's village. Livestock killings are rare. Human-lion conflicts are minimal. It's a fragile piece, but it works. Desta is now 60 years old. He's become something of a legend in Ethiopia, the man who saved a frozen lioness and created a model for human-wildlife coexistence that conservation programs around the world are trying to replicate. But he remains humble. "I just did what anyone with compassion would do," he tells the students and researchers who visit him. "I saw a mother and her baby dying and I couldn't walk away. The fact that they were lions rather than humans shouldn't have mattered. Life is life. Mothers love their children regardless of species. And kindness. Kindness speaks a language every creature understands. If this story moved you, please share it. Tell us in the comments, have you ever helped an animal in an impossible situation? Hit like and subscribe for more stories that prove the bonds between humans and animals can transcend every boundary we think exists. Because somewhere in the Simien Mountains of Ethiopia, lions and humans share the same space in relative peace, not because of fences or fear, but because of a memory passed through generations of a pride, a story told in behaviors and territory boundaries and the soft chuffing sounds of trust. Sometimes the coldest days lead to the warmest bonds. Sometimes saving a life means risking your own. And sometimes the most dangerous predators become the most loyal protectors, all because one person looked at a frozen lioness and saw not a threat, but a mother who needed help. The circle of life isn't just about survival of the fittest. Sometimes it's about compassion being the strongest force of all.